remind longtime attendees at the Neurotech Leaders Forum that Bryan first spoke at this event in 2016, 4 years ago, when Kernel was new and just really announcing to the world what the goals would be. So it'll be interesting 4 years later to kind of revisit some of those initial goals and objectives and see where we are today. So Bryan, are you with us?
I am.
Oh, great, Bryan. Thank you very much for joining us today. And with your permission, if I can work this out, I'd like to just show a brief video, just a snippet from the event that you did last month. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
All right. Let's see if we can get this going. I'm going to share my screen. And share computer sound. Let's see if that works.
Hello.
Okay, so that was just the introduction to last month's presentation that you shared with the YouTube world, and wanted to follow up on that and give you an opportunity to tell us a little about why you think the new flow system is going to be revolutionary.
Yeah, first, you may want to unshare your screen because that may be too many images of me for
Good
people
point.
to consume.
Thanks, Bryan.
Yeah, it's nice to see you again, Jim. And also, I see so many friends here on this meeting that I want to acknowledge. You know, when I first started working in Neurotech a couple of years ago, I knew nothing. So I see Bob Greenberg. Is he still here?
I believe he is.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, he was one of the very first people I reached out to, and he graciously met up with me, and I posed the question, you know, what is it like to build a company that's implanting something in somebody? And so he was my initiation in terms of orientation of what this industry was like and what kind of efforts these things would entail. So it's wonderful to see you all. So many of you have been very, very kind to me over the years. Yeah, so the objective, I guess, with Kernel and behind the event is I wanted to figure out, when I joined the industry, I wanted to figure out how we could build technology that would make brain interfaces or neural recording, similar concepts, mainstream. And mainstream, in a way, I guess there's a few ways to define mainstream. One would be, you can imagine every person having a brain interface and they wear it at some interval. Another way of it being mainstream is if you imagine two people having, two non-experts having a conversation referring to their brain or mind with numbers, and it being an understood concept. In the same way that we could all have a conversation about nutritional values like calories and fats and carbohydrates and the specific kind of fats, et cetera, that we all have fluency in terms of informing what we do with food intake. And that if we could imagine a scenario where the technology was sufficiently robust and widespread, that as a society, we were able to create a new language of understanding ourselves, that also would mark mainstream to me. But importantly, the biggest limiter in neurotech that I initially evaluated was money. It's extraordinarily hard to get money to do something in neurotech. And so I was trying to figure out if there was a commercial path that would enable breakaway commercial success that would then allow follow-on attempts at further product iterations.
Okay, so 4 years ago, when you were here at the Neurotech Leaders Forum 2016, you mentioned some ambitious goals, including, what I recall transforming the nature of human intelligence. And I'm wondering, in the intervening 4 years, what you've learned, how maybe some of your short-term goals and priorities at Kernel's may have changed, and what you've learned along the way in those 4 years.
Yeah, I understand brain interfaces through a few different frames. One is my personal experience with depression. So not having tools that I felt were adequate to address it. And then I have several family members who have suffered from addiction and other elements. And so I've been surrounded by and experiencing mental health challenges my entire life. And so from a personal perspective, I'm keenly interested in this technology moving forward so that we can better diagnose, manage our mental well-being. The second thing is that I do contemplate that the future of the human race, that the challenges we are facing are sizable, and it's possible that we've underestimated the size and scope of the challenges we're facing. And we have good data over a few billion years of biological species survive according to their rate of adaptation. And humans are no different, and we need to adapt to the changing environment. And the question I posed to myself was, if I were to try to figure out one thing to do in existence that would have the highest probability of creating success for intelligent life in the future, it would be creating a methodical and systematic way to evolve human cognition. Right now, it's extraordinarily hard to change ourselves. And if you can imagine a scenario where you're getting high fidelity neural readout and you're pairing that with a machine, it affords the opportunity to start evolving ourselves in ways, both that are known, but also many unknown ways. And so it really does introduce a new era. And the question behind the technology we've built, for example, let's take Kernel Flow, this time domain NIRS system, is, the question that's relevant is, does this product cross the threshold that triggers that? Now, we have early indicators in the non-invasive realm of EEG, fMRI, et cetera. Both have maintained relatively small niches in the world. And so the question is, will this product break out even further? And will it allow us to not only become more aware of our brain activity, but would it allow us to start imagining new ecosystems and ways of dealing with ourselves and others that we just don't have access to before, which would afford this potentially new evolutionary path of how we start thinking about ourselves, our relationship with others, society, et cetera.
Okay. Bryan, how have your views changed over the last 4 years with respect to the importance of implanted devices, implanted BCIs, for instance, versus non-invasive devices. Have your views changed at all? And if so, how have they changed?
I was really as impartial when I entered the industry. I didn't necessarily have an affinity for a given technology. I wanted to assess which one could be a commercial breakout of the most significant proportion, basically the most commercially successful brain interface technology in the market. Is there something that could be built? And in engaging with experts on this topic, I generally received the advice that there really wasn't a path in non-invasive. And so I tabled that for a bit, and I started pursuing the invasive, the implantable. Mm-hmm. And we pursued that for about 9 months. And in the meantime, we started looking equally, with equal enthusiasm on non-invasive paths. And so I hired a team of, had various skill sets in a variety of industries. And we went out and we looked at essentially everything we could find. We had no limiting factors in terms of the search space. And we spoke to all kinds of academic labs, industry, and we tried to piece together if there was a way to build a non-invasive technology. And we found time domain nears. And like, for example, something interesting that I think was, this happened again and again, is we would, for example, engage with an optics expert. And we'd poke around and we'd say, what could we do with terms of using optics as a way to image the brain? And they would offer up their opinion about a given thing. And then if we included in that conversation an expert for someone, for example, that could build an ASIC, a custom ASIC, custom detector. And if we could change the efficacy and abilities of the ASIC to detect photons on the optical imaging modality, it would change the expert's opinion fundamentally on what could or could not be done. And I found that there were these opportunities between disciplines. These opportunities were sitting there ready to go. They were just difficult to see because the right people weren't talking to each other. And that's how we built the foundations for both the technologies we're building today. So I'd say the largest opinion change I had is I did not think that we would be building non-invasive technology. Now that we are several years into it, I think that is the right decision for Kernel at this point in time. Now, that is not to say that we will forever remain non-invasive. In fact, I think that it will be a continuous improvement cycle where we will continually evaluate all modalities. But I think to start as a company, it will allow us to build quickly and potentially grow revenue fast.
Okay. Now, at your online event last month, when you introduced the flow system, you mentioned that there was going to be an initial trial program where 50 recipients would be selected, and you were collecting applications. How's that process going? Has there been a great degree of interest?
Yeah, the response has far exceeded our expectations. We will be announcing very soon the first partners that we've chosen, but it's a wonderful mix of academia and of industry. And so I guess the things that have been surprising, a few people have showed up with preliminary results doing things that currently most people maintain can't be done. And they're wanting to see if our device could potentially do those things as well. And it's to be seen. And I'd say also industry, in terms of we didn't know if industry would be able to map the technology with the potential. And because mostly the most fluency in industry is neuromarketing. And that's not something we wanted. We really wanted things focused on health and wellness of improving the human condition. And I'd say that the commercial intuitions have come very strong. And so we think that these initial group of partners will have a high potential of demonstrating really exciting applications and helping further tease the imagination of what's possible. I think really that the most significant limiter, now that we've built this technology, is accelerating the imagination set on what things can be done. And it will slowly trickle out to people in their various fields, but the more examples we can provide and the faster we can do that, the more fuel we'll provide for the expansion of the technology.
Okay. Now, it was obvious to me from your demonstration that the flow device has tremendous potential in a research environment, a brain research environment. It has a tremendous potential for developing consumer applications or wellness applications. But I'm curious whether you think there's opportunity for Kernel to partner with or to compete yourself in the medical device industry, whether there's potential to use this in a neurodiagnostic setting and clinical settings in the neurology marketplace. Have you explored that? Is it part of your business plan?
It is. It's a primary focus.
And this is something that would be pursued by Kernel, or do you foresee you would engage with a marketing partner on that segment?
We are open to all the above.
Okay.
The thing we care about the very most is building an ecosystem that enables everybody to do it. And so this is what I did at my previous company in building Braintree and Venmo. The objective there was to reduce friction to payment. So if you're at dinner with your friend and you want to settle the bill, what's the fewest number of steps possible and the easiest possible path to exchange money? And the same is true, when you're getting into an Uber, which we helped them build initially, where you just got into the car, you left the car without ever exchanging payment. So it was all about friction reduction. And if you think about that in the same paradigm as basically neuroimaging, how can you reduce friction, not just for researchers or not just for medical diagnosis, but for the everyday person to have the fluency? And so we're very interested in lowering the technical requirements for people to competently do reproducible neuroscience. And so we're really trying to make it friendly and accessible. So we'll choose certain paths, but our broader vision is that it's going to succeed when we have a much broader ecosystem cooperating together, where people are not siloed in their labs or in their companies, but it's a much more open and sharing-based system where people are collaborating.
Okay. Now, in addition to the nurse system, you're also investigating the magnetoencephalographic market. And I'm curious where you see the differentiation between the two technologies.
I mean, certainly with TD NIRS, you get a mass manufacturing device. It can be low cost, it's easy to use, it's easy to put on the head. You can imagine, we've stated this goal that we would like to aspire to have one in every home by 2033, which is Kernel Flow is the first brain interface ever built. I would hypothesize that one dare dream. That is a goal statement. Now, if we achieve that, we'll see, because we have to see how it performs and in what markets. But I'd say what you're getting there, that's the bundle of goods you're getting. What you're not getting with Flow is fast responses. You're getting hemodynamics, which are slower than you would get with MEG. And so it has a certain set of characteristics and attributes that we think will create certain markets. We think there's also a market for faster temporal capture of neuroimaging. And so we think MEG does that. Now, MEG is not the current version of optically pumped magnetometers as the next generation from squid-based MEG is not yet at a mass manufacturing level. So we're not going to put one in every home by 2033 with this technology. But what we can do is if you take the number of squid systems, so just compare it to what exists now. So MEG squid, I believe there's something like 150 MEG squid systems throughout the world. I believe that, and I may be off on these numbers, so hopefully they're roughly correct. I believe it's generated something around $1 billion of revenue over the past few decades, over that time duration. And so
yeah, that's close to what we've seen. Unfortunately, the number of vendors has dissipated over the years, just because it's such a, it's an expensive technology to maintain, and it's easy to fail given the price point of those systems.
Yep.
Thank you.
If we imagine on this to finish this question, if we imagine that we've been able to reduce the cost and the ease of use and the feature set that a person could have head motion versus being strapped into a doer, that they could have multimedia interactions, et cetera. And let's just say we've taken those various things by an order of magnitude better, then you can imagine we've unlocked a whole new game to be played. And importantly, that the scaling of brain interfaces does not have to be correlated or tied or limited by the number of devices and hands. So you could do work with an MEG system, generate an insight that you could then scale to billions of people. And so really the thing that scales with Flux is insights. Of course, we can scale much more than squid-based MEG, but it will afford an insight generation system that we've never had before. And that's what we find most interesting is, so we scale Flow in terms of devices, we scale Flux in terms of the insights that we are able to generate.
Great. Okay, I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. Jojo, does anyone have their hand raised?
Give them a chance.
Ooh. Okay, Andreas, you have a question? Go ahead.
Hey, Bryan. Andreas here. Thanks for your presentation. It's really great. Question is, so regarding Flow, what do you think would be sort of the top blockers or things that you need to address to be able to get one in every home?
Demand. I mean, fortunately, from a technology perspective, we can see the iteration path of how we make the system continually better. Volume, we know the price points we can get to. So we know that, for example, with volume, we can get a basic configuration of a few modules to be price point of a few $100s. So we know we can get to the price points that we would get mass adoption. We know we can do mass manufacturing. We need to show that there's usefulness in having this in a daily life. So really it's use case demonstration.
Okay, anyone else with a question? Don, you have a question? Go ahead.
Hi, hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Great, thanks. So thanks for being on, Bryan. I don't mean you to take this comparison the wrong way, but when just listening to you on the market side of this, I'm thinking about the Muse headset, which is a very narrow thing, right? Limited capability, but they have a killer app, which at least for the whatever size of the market they have, which is meditation. Do you feel like you want to focus Kernel on a couple of end user applications to drive that market demand, or how are you going to approach that?
Yeah, we think that the return on investment of our efforts will be much higher by enabling others. And so with these first few devices we've committed, they are collectively pursuing, I believe it's somewhere between 10 and 15 different areas, just with a pretty small number of devices. And I think there's probably some time duration where we can get a certain number of systems into the world and people are going to buy it based upon the potential. So many people, certainly not this group would make the mistake, but many people make the mistake in thinking about Kernel as contemplating that we are similar to Magic Leap or Google Glass or Oculus Rift. And that comparison is not appropriate because those technologies, the value creation is on the individual's experience creation. And really, if you want to make the comparison, we're more like Illumina, where if you think about the dramatic increase in demand for genomic data once they acquired, I think it's Solexa in 2007, and they hit that tipping point of price, quality, and availability, there was an exponential demand increase for genomes, for people wanting expected future value of genomic data. People had aspirations about what was going to work, but no one really knew what was going to work. And that's the macro trend I think we're going to ride is, at least for a certain duration of time, is if kernel flow hits the thresholds of quality, accessibility, all the things that basically make it So it fits to say, an organization will say, we will invest X amount of time and X number of people over these variety of circumstances to acquire data because we hope it's going to have future expected value. And so we think there's a buffer in there for market demand, and we don't need to immediately race to a given app.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bryan, one last question before we take our break, and something that a number of people have raised throughout this conference has to do with privacy and sharing of brain data. Also, who owns the brain data? Do you want to comment on what Kernel's opinions are on that subject? First of all, the ownership question, and second of all, the privacy issue.
Yeah, we believe that the individual owns the data, and they need to be given the controls over that data. It sits in neural data should not follow the trends that big tech has built over the past couple of years, where it's a sneaky model. Where you're not quite sure what's going on, you're not quite sure what's being collected, you're not quite sure where it's going. And as an industry, I think we share in the interest of making sure that people feel that this is a trusted ecosystem and that the players involved are in agreement, and that we're not going to employ sneaky tactics. It's got to be a trusted model, and it's got to be focused on the individual. Not one where you empower organizations to arbitrage the individual. You empower the individual to offset organizations trying to arbitrage you, or or to nudge them towards a wellness direction. But I think it's a significant cultural shift that we'll need to have, and hopefully that as we all evolve together with the various organizations we're building, that we will be able to form some level of consensus in this general direction.
Great. Well, appreciate your comments. And Bryan, I want to say thank you very much for participating.
Thank you.
And again, we wish you tremendous success in the years ahead as you commercialize Kernel's first products.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we're going to take a break till 10:30. And we hope that you'll all be able to come back and join us. We have several really wonderful sessions planned for the rest of the day. And also want to remind everyone, if you're interested in having a private meeting in one of our breakout rooms, send a chat to the scheduler. And again, we want to remind people that Neurotech will have breakout room number 1 and MST in breakout room number 2. So thanks very much, and let's reconvene at 10:30.